In LCK, there is one storyline that is so much more interesting than all the others, and it belongs to Kingzone. Kingzone is the team to watch this split. The interesting thing about Kingzone is that they weren't supposed to be good. Kingzone, firstly, Pawn became inactive before the start of this split and has some sort of medical issue, some sort of health issue. So currently he is inactive. Their starting mid laner unexpectedly became inactive. And then Kingzone was only able to go out and get Naehyun. I hope I'm saying his name right. They got Naehyun to replace him for this split. And for those of you who don't know Naehyun, he had previously played for a couple of teams. He played for ES Sharks in the Challenger League in Korea, which of course were not promoted into LCK. He also played for the Beşiktaş, however you say that Turkish team's name. He played in the Turkish League for a little while, but you guys may remember him as being the middle laner on Origin, when Origin was a challenger team in Europe trying to get promoted into the EU LCS. And he was pretty awful. I mean, that Origin was just kind of awful in general, if we're being frank, but he was particularly unimpressive as a player back then. So seeing Kingzone replace Pawn, the great legendary name of Pawn, with this guy who had been best known as being a blight on Origin fans for a period of time. I mean, it was not promising for Kingzone. And Kingzone in general, they've been gutted. Kingzone was gutted losing Khan in the top lane, losing BDD, losing Prey and Gorilla. The only player remaining on Kingzone is Cuz. From their amazing days as Longzhu Gaming and their amazing experiences as Longzhu Gaming and Kingzone when they were able to win LCK as Kingzone as well. I mean, they're a team that had a lot of great promise, but they were gutted by other teams. They lost all of those players. The only players that remain were Cuz, and then top lane, they still have Rascal. Rascal, who was the sub for Khan, he's still there. So you wouldn't expect this team to do anything, right? You wouldn't expect this team to do anything. They were able to go out and sign Daft. He was like the big acquisition they were really able to make to replace some of all these players that ended up leaving or retiring. So they got Daft, but you wouldn't really think that the roster they currently have is something that's worth cheering for. You wouldn't expect them. You probably wouldn't expect them to make the playoffs in LCK, much less finish first. But right now, they're first in LCK, and they look like one of the only two teams worth watching. For my money, even though I said all that thing about all the interesting storylines in LCK, right now, Kingzone and Griffin are the only two teams that are adapting to the international meta of team fights and everything that we've been talking about a little bit earlier. They are the only two teams that are really worth paying attention to in the sense that they might be able to go on and have some serious international success adapting to more than just a meta where you sit back and farm all day. And to see Kingzone do it is just shocking. This is a beautiful redemption story for Naehyun. This is a beautiful redemption story for Rascal, really. I mean, Rascal being someone who sat behind Khan, who you would almost wonder, why is Kingzone keeping this guy on their roster? They have Khan. Why is Longzhu keeping Rascal on their roster? They have Khan. To see him go and replace Khan and then go solo kill him in the spring split playoffs, and then go and just straight up beat him and look much more impressive than he is. I mean, for my money, Rascal is the most underrated player in the world right now. He is the most underrated player in the world right now. And Kingzone might be the most underrated team because very rarely do you see this happen where a team just gets gutted, losing almost every single one of their players who were all incredible players. That's why they were gutted, because all of their great talent ends up leaving to go join other teams. And then to see them get better and then become one of the best two teams in Korea. For my money, I think Griffin is probably going to end up finishing first in this regular season. And then I would say Kingzone number 2. I would say Kingzone over SK Telecom. I would say Kingzone over any of the other teams that you could see as having any sort of promising, Kingzone over Sandbox, Kingzone over Damwon, Kingzone over Afrika, KT. I think Kingzone is probably the second best, maybe even the best team in Korea right now. And one of the most interesting series you're going to see this split is when Kingzone plays Griffin, because those are the only two teams that are really playing well in terms of being able to adapt to the international meta. And it's shocking to see that Kingzone is one of those two teams. You would never expect at the start of 2019, end of 2018, with this huge exodus of players for them, you would never expect Kingzone to be one of the two front runners to bring glory back to Korea. And seeing all of those redemption stories in that team, seeing Naehyun, seeing Rascal, for my money, they are one of the most important teams to pay attention to this split, because it's just incredible what they would be able to do, not to jinx them, but if they end up winning the summer split, that would be one of the most unlikely stories that we have seen in a very long time. And I really hope that they end up doing. That would be great.